I'm Vaughn Welch, and I have the honor of being the director of Trusted CI. And I know we have well over 300 registrants today, so I suspect some of you are first-timers to the NSF Cybersecurity Summit, and this may even be your first time hearing about Trusted CI. So let me just say a few quick words about what we are, and I'll tell you a little bit more later about what we do. So first, if you're from totally outside the NSF space, CI in this case does not stand for critical infrastructure, it stands for cyber infrastructure, or in brief, research computing and everything that goes along with it to make computational science possible. And Trusted CI is a project funded by the National Science Foundation, very briefly with the mission of helping NSF projects meet their cybersecurity challenges and also leading the NSF community in advancing the state of the art and the state of practice in cybersecurity for research. It's a distributed organization made up of members from the different organizations you see on the slide right now. And so first, let me just say that all the work that I'm going to present to you over the next 23 minutes is the work of this distributed team and our community collaborators. So let me just take a quick moment and give thanks to that team for everything that I'm about to present. And so just a little bit more on Trusted CI. In a sense, we are sort of somewhat similar to the old joke. We're here from the government and we're here to help. We are a trusted partner with the community. We are not an auditor. We are not a rule maker. We're not a body such as that. We really are a collaborator with the community to address cybersecurity, a model that was 10 years ago when we were funded, one that was a bit of applied research in itself, but and I think as you've heard from others this morning or this afternoon, has borne out very successfully for the NSF community. So speaking of NSF, let me give them my thanks for both funding Trusted CI and funding this event, and then also the participation from Dr. Beverly and Dr. Kaiser in our sessions this morning. And I do also want to mention that tomorrow, Thursday, they have their own webinar that we're doing in coordination with them on cyber infrastructure and cybersecurity for large facilities. And just mention that is a separate registration. You can see the URL there on the screen, but encourage you that when our plenary is done, you can hear a little bit more about these important topics in that event that they're organizing. So before I start again, I want to thank everybody who made this event possible. And I'm not going to read through all the names on this slide, but let me just quickly thank Anita Niklich and Jim Marsteller for their leadership of the program committee, Diana Simmer for everything she has done to make the organization of this event possible. Thank you, Diana. Would not have been possible without you. And then a number of other folks in IU, CACR, and also in our IT communication office that are making this happen. And I do just want to acknowledge I am here in beautiful Bloomington, Indiana, and just take a second to acknowledge I'm standing on the home, the ancestral home of a number of indigenous people. So turning now to my talk. First, I want to talk, if you are new to a cybersecurity conference about science, I want to talk a little bit about why that's different. Why are we focusing on cybersecurity for science, and why isn't the wisdom and good works of NIST and others just sort of solving this problem for us? You've heard some of that from David Halstead and Robert Beverly this morning, but I'm going to give my own sort of take on that. And then I want to talk some about the activities of Trusted CI. First, in retrospect, in this past year of 2021, in case we have products that have come out or are coming out that would be useful to you. I want to make you aware of those. And then I'm going to look forward and talk about our planned activities in 2022 with the hopes that you might see something interesting that you might engage with us and work collaboratively on. So turning to cybersecurity for science, let me start by tackling the big myth that I find is very common out there, which is we tend to inflate in our society cybersecurity and confidentiality. very understandable. Newspaper headlines, data breaches, it's about data getting exposed. And so people assume if you're doing a form of science that doesn't have confidentiality requirements, there's no data you have to keep secret either due to compliance or ethical or other reasons, that lessens your need for cybersecurity and perhaps even makes it go all the way. And what I hope to show you here over my next few slides is how the other aspects of cybersecurity, for those of you familiar with the NIST triad, integrity and availability, are equally paramount and important to confidentiality in many NSF settings. So a very one that comes quite readily to mind is the need for data integrity to protect data tampering. Climate science is a great example of this, one that has become unfortunately politicized in our modern world. And so we find scientists here often having to not only literally defend their data against attacks, but also defend it against accusations of tampering or the suggestion that their results might be incorrect due to a bad data pipeline or provenance of some sort. And so this is a case where a cybersecurity program needs to be able to protect that data and actually defend its trustworthiness. We also have scientific productivity. Nature doesn't give you a second chance to collect information from an event. And if your instrument happens to be unavailable due to a cybersecurity attack, even one that wasn't targeting it as an instrument, you may miss the chance to collect valuable information about something that's going on for your scientific program. And unfortunately, you may have heard of ransomware, which has seen a spike in popularity by cyber criminals the last few years. Unfortunately, at its core, ransomware is a business continuity attack. It literally wants to prevent you from using your computers and your data until you pay ransom. And unfortunately, they care less about who their targets used to be than traditional cyber criminals who used to have to go after credit cards or social security numbers, easily fungible things. Now we're seeing K-12 schools, physics departments, hospitals being targeted and extorted for ransom. So here's a case where availability has really taken center stage as a key function of cybersecurity. Then in scientific research, reproducibility, knowing that we can reproduce our science is a critical aspect. This is a very complicated subject and actually one of research that has gone on with folks looking at reproducibility very broadly. I'll just give you a simple example. If you've got scientific results that have come off a computer, you later learn to be compromised, there's always going to be uncertainty as to how much you can trust those results. Now, hopefully, having given you some of the motivations for cybersecurity for science, why is this such a challenge? Well, if you look at this slide, on your left, you're going to see what is common in a typical enterprise environment. I know here at Indiana University, these are the sorts of things that we're going to have in our data center that's part of our core IT infrastructure to support the university, administrative functions, student functions, teaching, learning, day in, day out. If you were to wander around and walk into different research labs, you would see a variety of different infrastructure, different cultures, different timelines, etc., that make engaging in cybersecurity for research very different than engaging in cybersecurity for enterprise. Just one factor I always like to point out, if you get successfully awarded a grant, the clock starts on getting your publications done in a matter of a few years, as compared to the decades and even century that we in the university like to think about in terms of longevity of our infrastructure. So now let me turn to talking about trusted CI and our activities in particular. And first and foremost, we put on the stage the trusted CI framework. This is a framework for cybersecurity that we have developed based on our last decade of experience working with the NSF community, based on looking at the other control sets and frameworks that were out there, both for the science community and more generally. And it is our framework that is designed to allow the flexibility needed by the different NSF projects to implement cybersecurity in an efficient, effective way. You heard some this morning from Dr. Beverly talking about the different aspects of science communities that are out there, everything from telescopes to environmental sensor arrays. And so this provides the flexibility to create cybersecurity programs for all these different types of projects. Over the past year, we've had the pleasure of working with our colleagues at Noir Lab in implementing the framework, making them the first major facility to become an adopter of that. We've done the evaluation of their current cybersecurity program and identified priorities that are now in this latter half of the year being worked on with that collaborative team with Trusted CI. And you'll have more of an opportunity to hear more about that work tomorrow at 12:55. And then we also have a webinar later this month about that work. We also, through the leadership of Sean Peisert, undergone our annual challenge looking at software assurance in the scientific community, doing in-depth interviews with 6 projects spanning 4 of the NSF science directorates, doing an analysis of how we saw software assurance being applied, some of the areas where there's room for improvements. We have a report out now that you see on the slide with the findings from that. And later this year, we're going to be coming out with a report providing guidance to the NSF community based on those findings. And so tomorrow at 3:05, you can listen to a panel discuss that. And once again, we've got a webinar in December. I am delighted that we had the 3rd cohort of our Trusted CI Fellows this year. This is a group from the broad community that is spending about 6 months with Trusted CI with a series of lectures and talks on different aspects of cybersecurity, learning those basics so they can take that back to their communities and be ambassadors to help our outreach and help us understand the challenges of those different communities. And you're going to be able to hear them talk, I think shortly after I speak today at 2:25, talking about their experiences. And I'll also point out the call for 2022 fellows is now open on our website at the URL you see there. And I want to give credit to Mark Krenz here. Mark is our liaison with the Science Gateway Community Institute. This is a software institute funded by NSF focusing on science gateways. Mark, in that collaboration, developed a guide for cybersecurity practices to help improve the security of science gateways. And I will point you at the report is at the URL there on the screen. And I'll also point you at a webinar that Mark did with the SGCI folks. We did a number of different engagements over this past year. These are 6-month collaborations with individual NSF projects to work on their challenges. I'm not going to go through any of these in any detail, but you can see the links up there on the webpage. So if there's a project there that looks similar to your project, I invite you to go look at whatever the products that may have come out of that engagement or details, and there could be something there that could benefit you directly. We try to make the results of those engagements public whenever possible so the broader community can benefit. And I want to acknowledge the work here of Kathy Benninger and Craig Jackson, who lead the large facility security team. This is a group we convene of security representatives from all of the NSF major facilities. They meet monthly to talk about shared interests, receive briefings on topics that we arrange for them, and represent a great connection between us and the NSF community. And then finally, I want to mention, you heard David Halstead mention this earlier today, but Trusted CI does have a sister project, so to speak, the Research SOC. So where Trusted CI provides consulting and guidance, the Research SOC is about bits and bytes on the wire and professional services. So these 2 projects exist, and I just want to mention that we continue to have that ongoing coordination between the 2. And tomorrow at noon Eastern, you'll be able to hear a presentation on the Research SOC. So now I'm going to turn to looking forward into 2022. What are we going to be doing next year? So first of all, we continue our emphasis on the framework having an impact on the community. And one way we're going to do that is building off of the successes and experiences that we had with Noir Lab in 2021. We are organizing a cohort of major facility members to go together as a group in evaluating their current cybersecurity programs against the framework and coming up with a set of priorities to mature those programs into more fully meeting the different aspects of the framework. So we look forward to having that close collaboration and invite you to reach out through the URL on the screen if your major facility may be interested in that. We plan on focusing additional attention on the increased threat of ransomware. One of the activities we did in 2021 is working in close collaboration with Michigan State University, the CIO and the CISO there. We evaluated a ransomware attack that had occurred at their physics and astronomy department, looking at the lessons that a research-based organization can have about the impacts and the preventions that go around a ransomware attack. And that report is now published, and we expect to keep disseminating information about being prepared for and preventing ransomware attacks to help the community address this growing threat. We're going to have another annual challenge. This one focused on operational technology or cyber physical systems. If neither one of those words click for you, think about the type of technology that is used to move telescopes around or bring data in, this sort of low-level computer, SCADA, ICS type infrastructure. That sort of infrastructure is in heavy use in many NSF projects and major facilities. And we are going to do a study talking with a number of those major facilities about their use, about the risks that it has with that, and once again, publish a set of reports and findings and guidances on this particular topic for the NSF community. I also want to welcome a new member to Trusted CI. Recently, the University of Southern Alabama has joined, Deborah Chapman, Alec Yakinsow, and they are going to be looking at expanding Trusted CI's existing efforts in transition to practice. So in other words, how do we take the great cybersecurity research that NSF funds and move that into practice, either in NSF projects or otherwise, so that it has real world impact in terms of advancing the state of practice. So we welcome them. They're going to be hosting several workshops on this throughout the year, and welcome both researchers and potential users, and folks who are interested are welcome to connect with Deborah and Alec on this. I want to welcome some new project partners. Dr. Beverly talked about these some, but these are collaborators we're very honored to be working with, including the Minority Serving Cyber Infrastructure Consortium, Eva Dielman and her new CI Compass Center of Excellence, Dana Brunson and the RCD Nexus looking at workforce development issues, and then Carolyn Ellis with her regulated research community of practice, which fills a nice complement to Trusted CI in tackling that area of cybersecurity and compliance. Finally, I want to invite you all to come back to the Cybersecurity Summit next year and ask you to please save October 18th through the 20th for that event. At the moment, I'm going to call it a hybrid event, both here in Bloomington, Indiana, and online. We really hope to be able to welcome you here in Bloomington at that time, as I have very much missed seeing many of you in person over the past couple years. So with that, I am going to wrap up. This slide has a number of ways that you can stay connected with Trusted CI. We have a number of resources that I've only barely touched on or not really even mentioned here today, best practices guides, the webinars, our email lists, et cetera, lots of ways for you to interact with us and with the community sounding us on cybersecurity questions and challenges that you might have. And so with that, I just want to say thank you to the National Science Foundation again. And I am welcome any questions that Susan might relay from the audience at this point.
We have no questions yet, but we have about 3 minutes left if anybody wants to try to get something in. In the meantime, thank you for that excellent talk, Vaughn.
Well, thank you, Susan. And let me just say thank you to the folks who are attending today over Zoom. And I hope you're able to stay for the rest of the plenary today. And then the second day tomorrow. Thursday, of course, we have the NSF workshop. And then we have training followed by workshops actually stretching into Tuesday next week. So I invite you to go look at the program and hopefully find other parts of the summit that are useful to you in your roles at your various projects and other institutions.